Howdy, folks.
Yeah. Oh, you can go right ahead, David. Go ahead.
Howdy, folks. My name is David Cobb. I have the honor of, there is a terrible echo on my end. Is that happening for y'all or only me?
I am hearing it now. Maybe if everybody mutes, it'll go away. But we didn't hear it before we started recording.
Okay, so let's try again. Howdy, y'all. My name is David Cobb. I am very excited to be making this presentation on using an indigenous-led community land trust. I am keenly aware that this presentation is for the Green Party of the United States. I really want to honor the fact that the Green Party as a political party was, at least in my understanding, the first electoral political party that explicitly made indigenous rights central to its platform and program. I want to honor and lift that up. In fact, I happen to know that as the Green Party was forming, there was a question open about whether sovereign nations would join the Confederation if they were interested in doing so. So I say that not to be sycophantic, but just simply to acknowledge that the Green Party as a movement and a party has been at the cutting edge of trying to imagine what decolonization and land back might mean. I'm joined by my very dear friend and colleague, Michelle Vassel. Michelle is the tribal administrator of the Wiyot Tribe. I am speaking to you on unceded Wiyot territory. It is a distinct pleasure to know Michelle not only as a colleague and a work partner, but a friend who is helping me to imagine how, although I am an uninvited guest on Wiyot territory, how I can learn to be an appropriate guest. The Wiyot have stewarded this land since time immemorial, and I am learning greatly from her. So I'll just do a quick agenda review. Michelle is going to spend about 15 minutes giving a broad overview of Wiyot history and territory. Then I'll come back and in about 10 minutes, just do a quick explanation of the Wiyot Cooperation Humboldt relationship. Then Michelle will talk about some of the projects that we're doing specifically around and with our indigenous-led community land trust, and that'll give us time for an open conversation. I thank you all for muting yourselves so that we can have a good and crisp recording. It is our hope that this conversation would inspire other people in their local communities to learn more about the indigenous land that you inhabit and to imagine how to build an authentic relationship with those indigenous folks so that we can collaborate to create the peaceful, just, ecologically sustainable, and democratic society that we so richly deserve and so desperately need. And with that, I will introduce Michelle Vassel.
Hello everyone. My name is Michelle Vassel. I'm the tribal administrator for the Wiyot Tribe, and just to kind of orientate you to where we are in the world, Wiyot territory is around Humboldt Bay, which is in Northern California, and by Northern California I mean about 6 hours north of San Francisco, if you were driving by car. And I'm going to try to very quickly give you a history of about 200 years. So please do not expect this to be very comprehensive, but I just want to kind of give you a little history of where we've been as a tribe. So pre-contact, people lived in this area all around Humboldt Bay. The center of the bay is, there's an island called Tuluwat, which is the place where Wiyot people, the creation story is from. This is where Wiyot people come from, is this island in the center of Humboldt Bay. The territory extends around Humboldt Bay, south and north and a little bit to the east, but mostly right around the mouths of the rivers and just a little bit inland around Humboldt Bay. So prior to Western contact or colonial settler contact, this area was, peacefully coexisted with other neighboring tribes. Wiyot people had village sites all around this area. The main source of food was fishing and other marine life, hunting, and also gathering a lot of traditional plant foods, which are prevalent in our area. A lot of people in history books, if you've taken history, will say in this part of the world, people were hunter-gatherer societies, but we know where a Wiyot village site was because the things that they ate at that time are in the area. So Wiyot people were taking traditional foods and they were planting it where they lived, and cultivating it where they lived, tending to gardens in their villages. So we peacefully traded with other tribes in our area, and the original contact that we had was by Russian trappers. That was the first European contact. But the real major impact that came to our area from settler colonialists happened in the gold rush period. And that is a horrific time period for Wiyot people. That's when tons of people came to this area, and they were really the people, they weren't, the upstanding citizens. They were folks that were looking for gold, and also there were people that were looking to monopolize on basically providing goods to gold miners who were also, extracting their own resources in the area in different ways to support the gold rush. So during that time period, there was a number of really horrific massacres that happened in our area. There's one that's really well known. It's what happened on Tuluá on Indian Island in the middle of Humboldt Bay. And that happened at night after it was smack dab in the middle of a long ceremony. And it happened in the middle of the night when all the men were away from the island and the only people there were women and children. And there were literally people snuck onto the island and killed them in their sleep with quiet instruments like hatchets, and it was horrific murders that happened that night. That one is well known. It was actually one of a whole bunch of massacres that happened very similarly in our area, but it happened to make the news because there was a reporter from San Francisco who was visiting our area. And when people of Eureka woke up that morning and saw the bay full of blood, he happened to be one of the witnesses and wrote about it, and that made news across the country. Eureka actually was called Murderville in many papers in the New York Times and other articles across the country. It was given this label for this horrific incident that was publicized. So after the massacre, the Wiyot people were attempted to be relocated by the federal government. And I put this in quotes, but it was for their protection. And so Wiyot people were picked up from all around this area, taken to a place called Fort Humboldt, and relocated to, initially it was to Hoopa, which is about an hour and 45 minutes to the northeast. And then after that was unsuccessful, because Wiyot people kept returning here, there was another relocation up to Smith River, which is about an hour and 45 minutes north of us. And then after that was unsuccessful, because again, people kept returning home, there was another relocation effort down to Round Valley, which is about 3 hours southeast of us. And when I say these times, I mean by car, which wasn't how people got there in the past. Anyway, so no matter what happened, Wiyot people continued to return to their homeland, and they continued to just try to recover, try to survive. And by the early 1900s, Wiyot people were able to get enough money together to purchase a piece of land and private property, which we now call the Old Table Bluff Reservation. And in that place, in that location, we had, you saw basically, coming back together of kind of a government body, which was not, was, basically trying to recover the tribe as a, organized government. Through them, there was an attempt to request from the city of Eureka an island, or the city of Eureka return part of the island. We have people had not been able to be on the island legally for a really, really long time. So back in the 70s, the tribe started beginning to ask the city of Eureka if they would return the island, and the city of Eureka wasn't ready. So that didn't happen. It didn't, it made the press. There was a lot of local talk about it, but nothing ever really came of it. But one of our former tribal chairman, Albert James, he was the one at that time that was going to the city, and he was trying to make that happen. In the meantime, the tribe, I missed this little piece, had been terminated by the U.S. government. He also sued the U.S. government for the return of federal recognition and won, and restored our federal recognition. Move forward a few years in time. Another tribal chairwoman, her name was Cheryl Seidner, she picked up the same drive to go back to the island and see if the city of Eureka would return some portions of that land. And the way she started working on it was working with a couple of other local people. We had a local historian, we had a local, she was an affiliate of a local church, and then Cheryl Seidner and her sister Leona. And those two started holding vigils at the neighboring island, Woodley Island, at the time when the World Renewal Ceremony was held again. So it was at those meetings, at those candlelight vigils, I think that really we started to have community healing in our area. It was at these meetings that, we were held by candlelight, sometimes in really bad weather on an island in the middle of Humboldt Bay, that people came together that really kind of, they knew a little bit about the history of the massacre on the island, and they wanted to do something different about it. And it was through this culmination of years, and I'm talking like, 15 years of these vigils, that people really started coming together as a group, because it wasn't just Wiyot people attending the vigils, it was other Native people that live in the area, as well as non-Indian people, just people that live in city of Eureka, maybe, young people, older people, everybody was, a lot of different types of people were coming in. And it was there, I think, that we started working together as a community at healing this awful blemish that was in our city. So after the vigils, or after, quite a few vigils, a piece of property came up for sale, because most of the island, it was city owned, but there's also some that was privately owned. And a 1.5 acre piece came up for sale, and Cheryl Seidner, who at that time was our tribal chairwoman, she went to the council and she asked if we could purchase back that piece of the island, and then potentially we could return to the island on that piece. And at the time, the tribe has no economic development. We don't have we're not a gaming tribe. We don't have a casino. We don't have, we didn't really have any money to do it. But council voted yes. And, all of us that were here at the time were tasked with coming up with the money. And so we all, Cheryl's sister Leona created a logo, and we started selling t-shirts, sweatshirts, watches, lapel pins, anything you can imagine. We sold, we tabled at various events, every event in the area we tabled at. We would just put up a table and, sell t-shirts and just talk about the Wiyot return to the island. And so within a year, we were able to raise enough money to purchase that 1.5 acres. It was $200,000, and we were able to purchase that. And that was the first time in 150 years that Wiyot people were legally allowed to be on the island. But when we got on the island, the location, this 1.5 acres, had actually been a boatyard for many, many, many years. And I'm talking like, more than 100 years. And if you can imagine the things that they used in caring for boats 100 years ago, 120 years ago, a lot of those things are not legal today. They're, toxic chemicals that we wouldn't use in today's world. but those were left all over the island. There's gigantic vats of these things. It was basically this just horrific toxic waste site. So, and we knew that going in. We did the environmental assessment. We knew that it was a environmental disaster zone. We knew that wasn't fit for human habitation. And so, again, Cheryl went to our council and said, we need to start this cleanup effort. And they said, yes, we're going to start this cleanup effort. And we started with many of those people that came to the vigils in just volunteer efforts, showing up and removing. There was a lot of treated wood. There was a lot of just twisted pieces of metal that were all rusted. When we first got that 1.5 acres, you couldn't even walk across the island. There was too much debris everywhere. So we, started with those big physical hazards, the big physical pieces of things. We worked with our local community members. We had this gigantic engine. It was a hit and miss engine that was on the island. And if you could just imagine trying to get a gigantic like locomotive size engine onto a boat, just the engineering feat to get that onto a boat was kind of crazy. But we asked people in our community out to help, and they did. And it just so happens that we found people that were really into these old engines to help. And not only did they help us remove the engine, but they actually restored the engine. And you can see it usually in July. There's a auto expo in one of the local towns, and at that auto show, they have a engine display, and one of those engines is the one that was on the island. But we tried to recycle scrap metal. We tried to do what we could with the things that we had, find other community uses, and our local community really helped participate in that. We were looking to shore up a midden. I don't know if you guys know what a midden is, but a midden is made up. It's like, the remains of people living in a place for a long time. So if you imagine if you live somewhere for 10,000 years, and every night you ate things that involved shells, oyster shells or clam shells, or the things that you eat and the things that you use in your daily life, over time that builds up the soil, and that's called a midden. And so there was a shell midden on the north end of the island, and it was eroding due to diking that had happened by a previous owner on the island. And that erosion was, we were working to shore that up, and we needed more shells basically. And one of our local oyster farmers donated those shells to us to help us with that. I should also mention that the shoring up that happened prior to us owning that piece of the island was the midden was being shored up by a wall of marine batteries. If you can just imagine the tide coming in and the tide going out and running up and down across these marine batteries, it was a pretty sad state of affairs. But anyways, we worked for 14 years. We worked on cleanup of the island, and it culminated in the soil remediation, which was a very lengthy process that involved hazmat suits and archaeologists, because the place, being a shell midden, was very culturally, we needed to keep it culturally intact, but remove the toxins. So after 14 years, we got a clean bill of health from the EPA. And the ceremony that was interrupted in 1860 was able to happen once more. It was actually completed at the end of this cycle. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about too is, while we were working together as a community trying to clean up this portion of the island, the city of Eureka saw our work, and Cheryl Seidner, our former tribal chairwoman, reached out to them and asked for a section of the island back. And in 2004, the tribe received the first in history land transfer of 40 acres of Tuluwat back to the tribe. And that was a major historic event for all Indigenous people, and especially Indigenous people here in California. We also, we continued to work on that piece. So a lot of that midden work that we were doing shoring up the midden was on City of Eureka property. So when we took over that 40 acres, it allowed us to do more of that work. And we also did a lot of work on that section in removing some invasive species on that section of the island, which, and basically replanting some native species, which in the years following absolutely blew up. So when we removed those native species, we did plant when we removed those invasive species, we planted some native species, but really it was impressive. I can't even describe to you how quickly all of these native plants came back. I mean, they just blew up on this whole section, and it was just beautiful to watch. But also with that restoration of that land and the return of native species of plants came a whole bunch of increased habitat for local wildlife, particularly birds and particularly marine life. In our local area, I don't know all of your backgrounds, but eelgrass is a really important piece for like a nursery for marine life. It's where little baby animals grow up in. Fish and other marine life grow up in that. And there is across California, eelgrass is dying. It's all across the coast. And Humboldt Bay currently has some of the largest, most robust eelgrass populations, and that has a lot to do with the restoration on the island. But also what we found when we removed these species, these invasive species off the island, what we didn't realize we were doing is we were actually reducing it around the whole entire bay, because unbeknownst to us, this crop of invasive species that was growing and blossoming on the island was spreading seeds all across the bay. So if you can imagine, in the center of the bay, here's this island, and then, the birds and the wind take it all around. It was actually seeding the entire bay with this invasive species. So by reducing it on the island, we reduced it in the entire area, and therefore helped eelgrass and marine life all across the bay. And by cleaning up the island, we also really clean the water for the entire bay. Everybody in this area eats out of the bay, whether you're just a regular, family that puts a fishing pole in the water, or you're a commercial fisherman, or you're a commercial oyster farmer. Everybody in this area benefited from cleaning up that island and cleaning those toxic chemicals that the ocean was taking every time it went across the island. So we were successful at it after 2004, and in the work that was done on the additional 40 acres that the City of Eureka asked returned to us. Our former tribal chairwoman, Cheryl Steiner, went back to them one day and said, "Hey, would you think about returning the rest of the island?" Sure enough, the City of Eureka voted unanimously to return the 270 remaining acres of that island to the tribe. And that all culminated in 2019. And so yet another historic event and of land back for a tribe. And again, the first municipal government in the United States to ever willingly give back a piece of land without any kind of litigation, without any kind of being forced to. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And I really believe that it happened as a result of those vigils and the real community work that was done over the years to do a lot of healing in this area. So after the island was returned, it was just shortly thereafter, there was a large wind farm that was scheduled to be put up on a high prayer site for Wiyot people. It's called Wiyot, and where the island is considered the center of the Wiyot world. It's the place, the place where certain ceremonies are held, and it's also a place where it's just very religiously significant for the tribe. There's other places around that have a different type of significance, and this particular type of significance is the place where where people come to gather their medicine, where spiritual leaders go to before ceremony to get themselves right with the world. And so this place, which it's called Sakio. It's the southern end of Wiyot territory. It's actually like a border spot between two tribes. So this is where Wiyot territory ends, and this is where Matol territory begins. So in addition to being this this religiously significant area, it also is a place that's archaeologically significant because it's a place where two tribes come to meet periodically for trading or whatever is going on. And so this place has archaeological, it's just a place of historic importance. So this wind farm was coming, and I mean, maybe David, you can pitch in at some of the statistics about the size of these windmills, but we're not talking like little, like, you know, farm size windmills. We're talking these gigantic things. We have the tallest trees in the world, sequoia redwoods here, and these were supposed to be 4 times as tall as them. So, you know, the size of these windmills was really, really big, and the cement pads that they were going to be sitting on were basically going to destroy this place. All the archaeological, sites, and also the spiritual nature of the place. And unlike Tuluwa, which had been used as an industrial place and had been environmentally damaged, this place was actually environmentally intact. There was it was the same, you know, as it was 10,000 years ago, as it was 100 years ago. It was the same. So there was things there that you know, you can read about if you look at the old if you go to anthropologists that came to our area and studied Wiyot people 100 years ago. They recorded words from people about trees that are still there today. And so if they had taken this spot, they would have forever changed it. And it was something that had been there forever. It wouldn't be there anymore. Excuse me. Anyway, the the company is required by 2 different laws to come to the tribe and ask if they would be damaging any sites that are significantly and culturally important to Wiyot people. And they did. They came to the tribe twice, and twice the tribe told them, hey, this place, like, we love windmills, we want environmental change, but this place, please don't do it on this place. If you could just adjust it over here or adjust it over there, that's what would change things, or that would be okay. And the company that was doing it came to the tribe. They heard their response, and they just wrote it in their EIR that that they were going to damage the site, and there was nothing that could be done about it. It was unmitigatable, and they proceeded with their plan. And again, the tribe has no money. You know, we don't have an economic development. We don't have any. We don't have a tax base. We don't have a lot of money to fight in court about it. So we called upon the people of this community, and we asked them for help. And indeed, people came out, and after some really, really, really long planning commission meetings, and after several days of all day meetings of our county supervisors, with a split vote, that project was not approved, and we moved on. And that's really how I got to know David Cobb very well, is working with his group, Cooperation Humboldt. We had worked a little bit on some other things before, but really that it was where Cooperation Humboldt and the Wiyot Tribe really started working together a lot on a bunch of different things. And that was like shortly after that came COVID, and it was there, I think, that things really culminated in that when COVID first hit. I mean, you guys were doing your own thing everywhere else in the world, but right here in this place, we were still trying to work. We were trying to do the things that governments do, and we didn't have any means to do it. We didn't have any gloves. We didn't have any masks. We had elders in our communities that still needed to get fed, their Meals on Wheels program. And so David and I were literally like mixing hand sanitizer in the back of cars, trying to make things to keep our people safe, working on making masks for my staff, so that, you know, they could safely do their jobs in the community. And those days, if you recall, that stuff just wasn't available anywhere. You could order it, it might get there in 3 months, but we needed it today. And so we made do as a community and working together as a community to make those things happen. And it was shortly after COVID, or actually just before COVID, right, that we began this work that Dave is going to talk about now.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I just want to honor and thank you. I know that's a hard story to tell, and thank you for doing it. Michelle often makes me cry whenever we do this. We've done this a lot. And I think that, like, I'm not going to be embarrassed about it. I'm going to say that the reason is because not only is this a horrible history that we have to confront, but through Michelle Vassel, Ted Hernandez, the Wiyot Tribal Council, I am learning to engage in place-based healing so that I can heal myself and that we can heal this community. Because the reality is that I descend from Scottish peoples and Irish peoples who were driven off their land by the English Empire, traumatized, brutalized, pillaged, plundered, raped, and driven off, and then came to this continent and pillaged, brutalized, and traumatized another group of people. So there is generational trauma upon generational trauma. And the only way to heal that is to honestly address it and then to move forward together. And I think that the story that we're trying to bring to you here in traditional Wiyot territory, now known as Humboldt, is, I think, the way forward. Because you see, for us, land back is not merely a hashtag. And honor and doing land acknowledgements, as important as they are, don't actually lead us to justice. We have to do together the healing work that we're about to describe. So a couple of things that I want to circle back on. One, Michelle was very modest, but the reality is that the Wiyot Tribe earned the first ever EPA award for a site restoration. I think it's the first Indian tribe to receive that. Is that correct, Michelle?
The first tribe to ever receive a site reuse award, and it was for the environmental work on Tuluwat.
And that is what we're saying, is we can do that everywhere, right? And so we're going to do it here in Humboldt. And my loving challenge to Greens across the country is to do it in your community as well. A couple of things. One, Michelle doesn't remember, but I do, that we actually met even before Sakayuit, because a part of the story that she didn't tell is we have our own Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life. We got literally a local billionaire who was a millionaire timber baron who got rich pillaging the forests, or his grandfather and father. Then during the EPA crisis, bought distressed properties during the 80s all across the country, kicked off people and took their land and turned that into a billionaire. Security National is the horrible corporation. You can look him up. And this guy, while this historic land back of Tuluwat was taking place, literally went on in our community and bought radio spots, television spots, demanding that the city not do this, and threatening to sue the city for returning Tuluwat, which is the site of the World Renewal Ceremony. I mean, this is a movie, y'all. It cannot be any clearer on that we are doing the right thing to heal and restore. And this bastard, there's no other way to say it, like this horrible human being tried to actually stop it. So the Wiyot Tribe led a protest in front of their building. And that's where I met Michelle. Michelle was one of the key speakers. She doesn't like to be a public speaker. I know this about her, but she took the mic anyway and like moved us all to tears. I said a few words there as well. And I want to say, I still have the sign that says I stand with the Wiyot after Tuluwat. And so then when Sakayuit was threatened, obviously is agreeing on for wind power, just as Michelle is, right? Every Wiyot person and every conscious person wants to see that. But why, again, are we expecting the indigenous tribe and indigenous peoples to be the sacrifice zone? So we stood with them at Sakayuit. Then I want to just say, Cooperation Humboldt comes onto the scene. And honestly, the very first thing that we did was to make a commitment to pay 1% of the gross revenue that we earn every year to the Wiyot as an honor tax. And I want to be super clear, this is not a charitable donation. This is a self-imposed tax to recognize the sovereignty of the Wiyot people. They have stewarded this land since time immemorial. They know how to properly steward this land. And I believe that the Wiyot tribe is the actual legitimate governing authority here in their traditional unceded territory. So we act like it. And so, and I say without, I just say candidly, that we didn't create the honor tax. The Seventh Generation Front for Indigenous Development were the ones who had the insight to do it. But it's another example when a white-led organization took it up and then elevated it and basically made it a challenge to other white people that they should do it too. The Wiyot tribe accepted the honor tax, but they did not request it. They did not ask for it. They did not publicize it. So you know what? We did. And not so that we could get a pat on the head, but so that it could get out. Because I as a Green know that unless we actually tell the truth publicly and vociferously and loudly and everywhere we can, that all of this will be hidden. So the honor tax was a key part of what we did. The second thing is Tamara McFarland, the co-founder of Cooperation Humboldt, and I requested a consultation with Michelle Vassel, tribal administrator, and Ted Hernandez, the elected tribal chair, to say, we have ideas for food sovereignty work, for housing justice work, for care and wellness work, like all of our projects and programs, but we want to engage with you in a consultation because you are the appropriate governing authority here. And again, I say not to pat ourselves on the head, but to really anchor that if we are sincere about decolonizing, there are some very specific steps that non-Indigenous people can do to demonstrate that we're serious. So the honor tax, the request for a consultation, anytime the Wiyot people have asked for help, we've done our best to respond. And so just to name it, we responded to the threat of Rob Arkley against the Tuluwat land transport. We responded to the threat of Terrigen, a huge transnational corporation that was going to destroy a high prayer sacred site. We responded to the threat of COVID. And somewhere in the midst of all that, Michelle and I were like, you know what? We are doing so much together fighting back all the bad stuff. What would it look like if we went affirmatively to say, this is the world that we want to create? And that's where
Promote what we love.
Yeah, say it again, Michelle.
Promote what we love.
Promote what we love. And I just love the fact that Michelle will constantly bring love, compassion, and kindness into political conversation. Again, I learned so much from her, and I'm so grateful for this relationship organizationally and personally. The point I want to make is this. When we decided to promote what we love, we decided to create an Indigenous-led community land trust. That is called Dishkama Humboldt. That means love Humboldt in the Wiyot language, and love in its broadest sense. Not a pronoun, not I love, not you love, not we love, but the most encompassing way to say love. And it is important for us because that is a way for non-Indigenous and non-Wiyot people to participate in it, but under the leadership of the Wiyot. So as we created an Indigenous-led community land trust, our board of directors, 7-member board, the Wiyot tribe will appoint 4. Notice it's not just 4 Wiyot people, the tribe itself is appointing for. So that is a commitment in perpetuity that the tribe makes to this experiment. Cooperation Humboldt, as an organization, will appoint one board member. A group of impact investors will appoint one, and we're asking our local community foundation if they would be willing to appoint one as well. The point is, we're not just individual people, we are organizations collaborating together to work on projects for regenerative economic development. What I would say is the best of the Green Party's principles and values around community land trust and worker-owned cooperatives and a new eco-socialist vision of how to create the world. I say new in sort of European philosophy, but the reality is it's a return to the indigenous way of properly stewarding the land and taking care of people. So this is my effort to sort of say that the Wiyot Cooperation Humboldt relationship actually comes out of doing work together. And the last thing that I'll say before I turn it back to Michelle to talk about some of the specific projects for Dishgama Humboldt is the notion that we are moving at the speed of trust. And it took years of just beginning to do stuff. And now Michelle and I are to the point where we're literally talking sometimes multiple times a day, but there's not a week goes by that we don't talk probably at least 3 times, just sort of as we're doing the work. But you can't, we didn't, like, it organically developed out of authentic work together. So with that, what I'm going to do now is drop into the chat a link to a story that actually describes what we're doing, and ask Michelle if you could just talk just quickly, because I'm conscious of the time, but just share a little bit about some of the projects that Dishgama Humboldt will be taking.
So a couple of the projects that we're working, I think the main ones that we're working on right now is we're working on building affordable houses in parking lots in the city of Eureka. And by affordable houses, I'm not talking about building the projects or, you know, building, you know, just big cement blocks that you know, house as many people as possible. What we're trying to build is what we're calling deep green. We're trying to build on, you know, we're talking about parking lots here. We're trying to basically, remember the old song, they paved paradise and put in a parking lot. We're trying to do the opposite. So we believe we live in paradise, and this is the best place in the world. And we're taking parking lots and we're turning them back into paradise. So by we're taking these parking lots, we're building. Yes, we're building apartment type complexes on them, but we're trying to use green materials in the building. So the building materials will be green, the building technologies will be green, and we're trying to build into it passive energy systems that will you know, reduce our carbon footprint, but also we're actually trying to build green buildings in that they will have living features like rooftop gardens and open spaces with actual living plants on them, because that's really important. We're actually returning places that were cemented over and turning them back into living places again. And we're really focusing on trying to make buildings that look appropriate in our area and that look like they belong here, and not something that looks, you know, like it doesn't belong in the environment. So focusing on trying to really building in existing footprints and rehabbing old buildings as well. David has a focus on trying to fix we have a lot of old dilapidated Victorian houses in our area, and trying to restore those and make them into affordable housing for people. We're also looking at putting the land in these different community or these different development projects that we work on into the community land trust. So we're decommodifying the land, and we're also returning land to the tribe at the same time, so that we can make housing more affordable in our area. We're also looking at creating eco villages, which are basically, we're trying to use a lot of green spaces, keeping them as green as possible, and making like small homes, tiny homes, or like you could think of around common space, so that we can use the space for creating food gardens, animal habitat, trail systems, that or just like open space for kids to play in. Imagine, like, if you live in a neighborhood, the houses are all facing outwards, and your kids play in the street, which is like a dangerous place to be. We're trying to connect people so they have green common spaces together that's protected. So that might be, garden space, that might be kids running around space, but it wouldn't be on the street. It would be the opposite side. It would be in the community space. So the houses would be circled around common space. Those are some of the projects in summary. David, if you want to add anything, I know we're running out of time.
No, I think that that was great, and we can talk about the specific projects if folks like. But what I'm going to do now is invite Diane back onto the screen, who has offered to facilitate just an open question. And so, if you have a question or a comment, let's take two at a time. I think, Diane, since we're small enough. So let's just get two people to make a comment or ask a question. Diane, if you'll take that on and solicit those, then Michelle and I will respond. Then we'll take two more. So we'll try to get as many people as possible. And our hope is that everybody gets an opportunity to at least share a comment, a question, or just make a share.
Okay, and right now you can either write stack in the chat or hands up. I see we have 3 right now, but we will do another segment. So feel free to drop stack in the comments or raise your hand, and we will go from there. So Jackie, question or comment?
Yes, I have 2 things. One, when you talk about restoring the houses, I was just thinking that I was wondering, and I don't know if it would be feasible, but HGTV has a lot of people that do restorations, and also that new Magnolia station with Chip and Joanne that seems to be a little bit more grounded than some of the others. It might be worth a while to see if maybe they might come to help you restore, bringing your story forward and making it part of the show. It's just a thought around that. The other thing I just wanted to say is that if there's enough time at the end of all this, I would like to just speak on what is happening with the Wabanaki here in Maine.
Okay, so we're going through 3 questions and comments, and David and Michelle will respond. So next up is Deborah.
Hi, I wanted to thank Michelle and David for all the work you've done. Yes, it's very emotional, and I can imagine what you went through. I'm wondering, how can we get land back for all the indigenous nations, including Native Hawaiians?
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Jackie. And next up, we have Joshua. Okay. You're unmuted now, Joshua. But we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a lot of questions, something quick. What's your advice to me or any who want to replicate what you did in Eureka, the work you did replicate it and what's your advice to tribes that chose the gaming route? How do I bring it up? Any advice? How does anybody know about the Wiyot tribe here in California? This story that we're all in right now, pretty inspiring. I think it is the blueprint to talk about Tulare Lake. But how do I bring this about to the Tachi tribe, to the Chukchansi tribe, when they are in a, it seems, different mindset, and I'm over here, the whole reality is gone. So how do you get back something that's 100% gone to what you guys are doing? How does Fresno, King, Tulare become more Humboldt, Trinity, Mendocino?
Thank you, Joshua.
Michelle, I'm going to invite you to react to anything you heard from Jackie, Deborah, Joshua, and then I will.
So Deborah, how to get land back. I think it's a lot of hard work over a long period of time. I think I've only been part of this process for since the late 90s. I came into this led by our former tribal chairwoman, Cheryl Seidner, who kind of scooped me up out of college and you know, mentored me and got me involved with all this stuff. So I guess that, you know, one piece is listening to your elders and, you know, following the path they've laid out for you, because that wasn't what I like. When I go back and think about like what I was going to be when I grew up, I said pet shop owner. I didn't imagine that how this would happen, you know. But I think that following your elders is one thing, and two, it's like, you know, it's a lot of hard work and it's a community work. It didn't just happen like that, you know. There was, you know, at least 100 years of Wiyot people. It was intergenerational work. You know, it started, you know, the day that Wiyot people couldn't be on the island anymore. But it continued for, you know, each generation had played a different piece in keeping things alive and just having that vision that this was going to happen one day. You know, our former tribal chairman, Albert James, he was very active in the 70s. And he had a group of people in the 70s that were really working hard with him to try to see to the return of the island. But I think the difference in the 70s versus the 90s was that community building piece, that community work that Cheryl had both the Indian community and the non-Indian community, and she had a space for those groups of people to come together. Because imagine that the massacre is a shameful piece of history in Eureka, and there's a lot of like white guilt around it. People don't like to talk about it. It's horrific. If you actually, you know, read the article that was published in 1860, it's horrific. You know, it's hard to look at. And by coming together as a community on Woodley Island and literally looking at that history once a year and talking about it, that I really believe laid the foundation for people to come together and work on healing that divide, and also working on trying to you know, just talk about what could be different and projecting that vision of what we want is, you know, what Cheryl really did. She said, we're going to get this island back. And we did. And it came with all that, like that work. Also the environment, there's something to be said about healing the environment, healing the land, and healing the people. That elbow to elbow grease, like getting in there and, you know, doing labor with your neighbor, it creates relationships that are real. And I cried when I talk about Sakyewit for some reason, because it wasn't supposed to happen. Because that, you know, we don't, just the regular people don't stop corporations, you know. we didn't do anything really big, but what we did have is that that corporation was from far away and didn't have any connection with the people of this area. And what we had was community power, and it's different than money power. And we had relationships. Those supervisors were going to have to look us in the eye when this was over. And that is something that's powerful. Go ahead, David. Why
Well, I told you it happens all the time. Michelle and I make each other cry because what we're doing is so real and raw, and it's really true. And like, come on, Greens, like we know what it's like to fight up against corporate power. We know what it's like to fight up against the big two major corporate parties. And we did win because we actually stood together. And so my quick response is, one, Jackie, thank you for the suggestion on like reaching out to some of those rehab companies. If anybody here can get us in touch with anybody, Michelle and I are having conversations about what we're doing all the time. Michelle, you don't know this. First of all, Michelle just landed us a Yes Magazine conversation. So, you know, fingers crossed. Michelle, I just landed Next City is interested. And we have a writer at Next City who wants to actually talk to us. So I guess what I would say is help get our story out so that we can make it easier for others to do it. Because like, if we, like, even if like we live in paradise, Michelle and I do, right? In large part, it's because it still looks much like it looked like pre-contact, right? We are rural, we are remote. This is, quote, undeveloped, which is to say it's beautiful. Here's the thing. What we know we need to do is help other people replicate some version of it everywhere. And that's the comment that I would make to Deborah and to Joshua. I don't know exactly how to do it where you live, because wherever you live will have a different set of circumstances. So Michelle and I have a concept, right? But you can't just take our seed and plant it in your territory, because it has to, your territory is different. Your history is different. But I can tell you this, you have to build authentic relationships. And I did drop into the chat, and I'll say it out loud to folks. I would strongly recommend you use this resource to find out the history of the land where you currently are, find out about the history of the people who stewarded that land pre-contact, learn as much as you can, be as humble as you can be, and engage the process. Secondly, create a local honor tax. I am willing to help folks. You can reach out to me. I think that this is so critically important. We need to make this happen everywhere. And I'll say very quickly, y'all, like, so I'm old enough, some of you here will remember, I remember the reparations movement from Representative Conyers. I was a college student, and I was involved in reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans. And at the time, the whole ask was, thank you, we got 20 minutes left, so I'll go quick. The whole ask there was, hey, get your congressperson to support John Conyers' resolution to just study the concept of reparations, right? I lived in a right-wing congressional district. Like, it was incredibly disempowering to say, what I'm supposed to do is engage a system that I don't even believe in to try to beg them to just consider an idea, right? Look at what an honor tax does. You can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for government. Federal, state, county, city. We did it ourselves. And this DIY is in the best spirit, do it yourself is in the best spirit of the Green Party. What would it look like if Green locals across the country began to call and help to create honor taxes? What we would do is to demonstrate that our principles and values and that amazing platform that we have actually has meaning to us in our day-to-day lives. So Joshua, that's what I would recommend. And I have no advice for you about gaming. I think that's incredibly complicated. And I don't even know how, and would not even begin as a white person to touch the subject, to be very blunt. It's not for me. And
I can just throw out there, Joshua, I think for this tribe, I think that, you know, you have elders and you have sometimes very young people, and it might seem like you're alone, but there's a lot of other people out there. So creating a spot, a place that you can find other like-minded people, whether it's just holding a cultural class every Wednesday once a month, for other people that want to really restore your tribe's culture. Create a space for that, and invite elders that have knowledge there to that space. And I'm telling you probably have a lot more cultural resources than you realize, and you probably have a lot more like-minded people than you realize in your community. And it's creating that space to come together as people envision what you want in the future for your tribe. That's, sometimes it just takes one person to say, hey, let's do this. And there's a whole bunch of people that are thinking the same thing, but they aren't saying it out loud. So say it out loud, invite people.
Okay, and it looks like we have time for another round of questions or comments. So if 2 or 3, depending on how many more we have. So you could either drop stack in the comments or raise your hands. Okay.
Where do I raise my hand?
Oh, okay, you're on the stack queue. Okay. Okay, so just to move things along, we'll go with Bernie first and then Jackie. Oh, you're muted, Bernie, sorry.
I'm a little late. Sorry about that. I had some problems with my computer. I've had some very good experiences today in the other plenaries. This is kind of dear to my heart because I have a lot of friends in the Lenape and Nanticoke Nation down here in Delaware, where I live. Southern Delaware has a very large tribal population. So, but the speculators and the land grabbers in Delaware are just buying up all the land. They don't want to have any set-asides for the people who have been asking for them for a while. And it's just like really becoming barbaric, like about last month or maybe longer than that. I'll lose track of time because I've been invalid from COVID. They destroyed a burial ground for a golf course. It's despicable. It's just awful. And the ramifications are, the pain of this. And, and seeing our, the Delaware inner bays becoming very polluted and unlivable and fishing. I mean, it's affecting everybody, this climate change and development. And fighting these guys, we take them to court. We have done this. I'm a member of like a couple of groups, but just trying to take them to court over, like I'm on the board of the Audubon Society, and we're suing them. We have like 10 lawsuits in on waterfowl and birds and all this. And it's like, pardon my French, it's like pissing up a rope in a windstorm. And it is awful. The corporate power here, especially being in a state where the president's from, is even worse for anybody that speaks out for individuality, being a left-winger, and looking out for the greater good. It's just ridiculous. So, I've been involved in actions up in like New Jersey with the pipelines they're trying to put through the Indian land over there. I'm in contact with me and Meyer Russin. We're trying to stop a major natural gas LNG terminal from being built. I mean, there's so much work that needs to be done, but so few people are taking the time to do it. And it's bombing me out completely. I'm not giving up. I'm having kind of a respite a little bit. But we have to keep fighting. We have to try. Yes, and like I like the idea of the honor tax, David. I think that's a super thing. But trying to get it implemented and get the people to do it is a problem. It's just awful. So, we have to keep fighting. We can't give up, especially like Delaware is going to be really affected by coastal flooding and the Arctic ice caps melting. And it's already happening here. We have, we have lost our rare birds because of the coastal flooding is wiping out the shoreline. And it wiped out the this year's horseshoe crabs. I count horseshoe crabs every spring. So you understand? So anyway, I'll let you go. I just wanted to make these comments that to keep the faith up, as frustrating as it is, be sure we don't forget to love each other and respect each other. And most of all, we have to respect and love those things that can't really speak to us, but we know that they're there, So God bless you for what you do with the island and what we're doing and the fights that are going on around the country. Line 3, and some of the stuff we have stopped, but only half stopped because of the politics. And this present government, and this guy Biden, whoa, he's worse than Trump. Peace, guys.
Thank you, Bernie. And next we have Jackie. We are getting close. We have about 12 minutes left.
Yes, I understand. I work very closely with Wabanaki here in Maine. We've had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee up here in Maine, and working close in a group called REACH, which works around the schools of the taken. But I just wanted to tell both David and Michelle that I will take what you have put in here to some of the people and some of the Wabanaki, and they may want to reach out to you folks for help around that. I did quickly want to say that in Maine, the Penobscot Nation, which when the treaties were signed out of Massachusetts when they came here, were given the land, the islands from the bank to bank for their hunting and fishing. And they have just had that river taken away from them so that the polluters can continue to pollute. And that's what the judges brought down. So we've got huge fights here. And I cry every time I have to go to the State House and listen to the elders trying to get the rights of their sovereignty in this state. So my heart's with you guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie.
So I'll just say very quickly this. I have learned both in the work and through the work with Michelle and Ted and the Wiyot Tribe, and that is this, that there is both a spiritual and political practice associated here. And I'm just going to name it, that in my cosmology, the goddess does not expect or demand that I win or succeed. What she expects and demands of me is that I do my best. That's all I can do, is I do my best. I bear witness to the destruction that's happening. I do my best to be a person in integrity, to live according to the values that my mama and my daddy and my mama and my papa taught me about being loving, compassionate, and kind, and do my best. And here's the key. And then I release the result, because it is profoundly egotistical to think that somehow I can fix any of this. It is profoundly arrogant to think that I'm capable of making these changes. What I am capable of is conducting myself with integrity, with honor, with dignity, and live, and I'll say, according to the 4 pillars of the International Green Party movement of peace, justice, democracy, and ecology, or the 10 key values of the US Green Party. And then the last thing that I'll say before I hand it over to Michelle, maybe we'll get another round in, is to say this. I walk every day and I have the privilege of being in wild nature, and I make it a point to listen to the birds. And I'm always listening to see, have they given up yet? Because whenever I hear the birds, they're always still singing. They're always still there. And I say to myself that the birds haven't given up, and so neither should I.
I just want to shout out to Bernie, because David can attest, baby crabs are my favorite little animal. I'm always talking about the baby crabs. I just love them.
Well, I'll just make a comment here real fast, is that, the crabs, blue claw crabs, I grew up and raised them. And when I was growing up, my family, we were watermen, and we used to go out fishing and crabbing all along the Delaware Bay and the marsh. Delaware has great saltwater marshes. And the blue claw crab is like #1. And then we had a great flyway in with the geese. The snow geese would come in, and the ducks from Canada on the eastern flyway. That's all gone out of Delaware. Completely gone. And, and like I live in a special area. And I bought this place with my wife, the place. I live on 50 acres of open space in my community with only 80 houses. We bought in here earlier, and I'm not moving. I have 3 stormwater ponds. I have deer, foxes, raccoons, myriad birds, and and I have a good committee here in my development, and I'm working on getting monies to build an artificial wetland. This is the kind of person I am. I see things. Hey, there's government money. I'm going for it. Get rid of invasive species. So just imagine, like, I've literally, myself and 5 other people, we copped up, like, we got $250,000 for stream restoration for about a mile of stream, and shared it with communities. So there's a lot going on, if you got these special areas, but around them is completely being overrun by overdevelopment. And we've got like a wall up against this stuff. But the sea coast along the Delaware coast and Delaware Bay, it's become a liquid desert now. The global warming and all the nuclear plants, the refinery that is here, the power plants, they're all...
Bernie, I'm going to ask if we could maybe just give an opportunity for anyone
Yeah,
else.
of course.
Another voice.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
Not a problem at all. I'm just filling it up.
So again, I do want to give just one more opportunity. Frank, I see you raising your hand. So we have Frank. Is there anybody else who would? So let's just hear from Frank.
Just wanted to say that this has been one of the more enjoyable sessions that I've attended. I love Michelle's narratives, stories, as well as yours, David. So I wanted to thank you for this. I've got to take somebody to supper this evening, so I'm going to have to depart with y'all and wish you the best. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you all. I will invite then Michelle, any final thoughts that you have, and then I'll share some thoughts, and then Diane, if there's anything coming up, I'll hand it over to you to conclude, just to encourage folks to continue with the program for the annual national meeting. Michelle?
David, I thought you were going to talk, when you were talking about the birds, I thought you were going to talk about the hawks.
Oh, tell that story. Please tell that story.
So David and I occasionally we do these things called walk and talks, where we go to a site that we're working on, and we just like walk the place and look at the place and talk about, ideas and things like that. And we were talking about this one particular project. We were in this particular place, and I literally said to David, do you think that we could do this? Do you think that like this is real? Like, do you think we could pull this off? And David was responding, and then in the middle of the response, we hear these hawks calling out to us. And I told David to look up, and we looked up, and there's these two hawks, and they were circling around us, and they had called us. And like from that moment on, we were like, yep, we're just gonna keep going. That was the birds talking to us.
Well, Michelle, thank you for so much. I literally, we were at the Badawat Festival on Wednesday, and I pointed out to Ruthie and her son, Michelle and I, because I've told this story, right? We were right there. I walked right by where that happened. And y'all, this was early when we were imagining, because we had done a lot of work together, right? You know, we already talked about it, right? But this is big, what we're talking about. And it's true, we were looking at some projects, and Michelle literally said, do you think this is real? Like, could we really pull this off? This is so big. And I was beginning to respond, and Michelle heard it first. And because I was talking, right? And she literally went like this, and I looked up. Y'all, two red hawks were literally circling, and they didn't just circle once. Like, we both stopped talking, and just my mouth was open. They circled over us and called to us. So I now know that the goddess has instructed me to do this work. And like, this is my life's work. I'm going to die here in Humboldt. I'm going to learn how to heal myself and heal this place. And I want to conclude with this. I think that the work that Cooperation Humboldt and Dishkamu and the Wiyot Tribe are doing together is the best example of what it means to put Green Party principles and values into practice. And my loving, respectful challenge to Greens everywhere is to replicate some version of this in your community. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, because it won't look exactly like this, because you're not in Humboldt. We are. I am in traditional Wiyot territory, but you are somewhere else. And I want to conclude with this. Remember that your ancestors were once in right relation with each other and with the birds and the trees and wherever it is. Learn about your own heritage, learn about your own roots, learn about your ancestors who once lived in that right relationship, and do your best to remember it. Because I'll end with the words of Chris Peters of the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Development, who said, David, you descend from indigenous people. And it makes me sad, because I know what a good person you are. It makes me sad that you don't remember that you weren't brought up in that, but you deserve it. And so you just have to work harder to try to hear that and relearn it, because although you may not have been born into it, it's in your DNA, it's your birthright. So do the work of finding it. And through Michelle and Ted and the Wiyot Tribe, I'm doing my best to get back to my proper ancestral roots. Thank you.
Okay, now, Michelle, did you have any closing words?
Nope, just I know that everybody here is, you know, this space is open. Like, everybody who's attending this is like, they're people that have that are like-minded. So I know that you guys are all out there doing your hard work. So, you know, keep the faith, make things happen in your communities. You can do this. And you know, you might not see it tomorrow, but you know, if we keep on, you know, working together and pushing forward, you know, maybe you don't see it in your lifetime, but maybe, you know, 60 years from now it happens, or 100 years from now it happens. I think back on the history of this area and the generations that work towards the goals that we've had. And I just happen to be the lucky one who was here at the time when these things are happening. So good luck out there.
Well, David, Michelle, thank you so much for your stories of inspiration. I know you give us all tons of hope, and now we've got a lot of work to do to do the work that has to be done. So thank you all so much. I think you all have information about the rest of the programming. We have a few minutes in between the next section of the Anti-Oppression training plenary that begins at 6:30. And don't forget, tonight, the fundraiser, 8 p.m. is the meet and greet, and then 9 p.m. is comedy with Graham Elwood. So I'll see you guys at the next sessions. Thank you all so much.
So much.
Peace and love.